Okay, okay. You told me to be ready. I'm not. Oh yeah.
Good morning. Good morning, Timothy, and everybody watching us on this rainy, snowy Sunday morning in December. Very welcome to Japanese Politics One-on-One with Timothy Langley, who is the CEO of Langley Square, the longest standing government relations agency here in Tokyo. In this episode or in this series, we talk about Japan, its politics, what is going on in Japanese politics, Japanese economy as well, a little bit, and of course, geopolitics sometimes, and the yen and more. So, Timothy, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Let us know what you're going to talk about today.
Sure thing, Maya. Good morning, and good morning everybody else who's phoning in or that's watching from various parts of Japan and the world. It is very chilly here, Maya. It is cold. It is raining. It is the wind is really strong. So I'm kind of stuck in port on the good ship Grimm's here in Hota, tied up there. But that's kind of what it's been like over the last 4 or 5 episodes as well. And today we are in the final throes of the Japanese Parliament, the extraordinary diet session that was launched about 2 months ago, and we have 3 more days left. It is not expected to be too much more tumultuous, but there's only, it will end on Wednesday. So Monday and Tuesday, we can expect some things to be happening. But thank you very much for joining us on episode 253. This morning, I want to walk you through what actually mattered in Japan over the last week, not just the headlines, but the forces that are shaping what comes next. We're approaching the end of the very consequential year. And while this diet session is wrapping up the political and economic and geopolitical momentum it has generated, will carry straight into 2026. There might even be a snap election in the very first week of the new diet in January. But I'll cover 4 broad areas today: the Prime Minister's week and the state of play inside the diet, the economy and the yen, including what the Bank of Japan may do next week. They meet on Thursday and Friday. Regional security, there's a lot going on there, and Japan's increasingly active surroundings. And finally, what to expect as the year winds down and we look ahead to January's regular diet session. Maya, back to you, and then I'll get into the details.
Thank you, Timothy, and to everybody who is joining us now or will join us later. Thank you for this. Please let us know that
You're
you
on
have been
mute.
here. I am not. No. You cannot hear me, but I am. Okay, let's see whether people can hear me. If you can hear me, who is watching, yes, please let us know. All right. Before Timothy comes back, thank you again, and please let us know that you have been here by leaving. Thank you very much, Greg. Yes, leaving a comment or also hitting like, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, or also let us know by asking questions, because we've got a Q&A session after Timothy finishes the briefing where we actually get the most value for these briefings here. And it is important for us because we know that we can help with, just giving some context. And I know that you are also very, here we go, you are also let's say very helpful. We're grateful to you for helping us build that context as well. So it's a pleasure to have you with us once again. On the way, we're going to talk about different things, and I'll do some housekeeping again. But before that, again, Timothy is here. So Timothy, welcome back. And now it is over to you. Please walk us through the political events that happened this week.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for bearing with us. I am broadcasting on a Wi-Fi from a boat that's floating in the harbor. The Wi-Fi is not so strong. So from time to time, we have these glitches, and I apologize about that, but I think we've got it fixed, and we'll be solid for the rest of the briefing. This last week, there were no state visits or major foreign guests visiting Tokyo. The Prime Minister is just packed. This is her 6th week as Prime Minister, the first female prime minister in Japan's post-war history, she has been really just running crazy. You can see it a little bit in her face. Maybe she's getting a little bit tired, but it has been really a busy week. No foreign visitors, but the prime minister has spent the last of this week inside the Diet and in budget committee sessions defending her government's fiscal posture and navigating increasingly tense coalition dynamics. You remember she came in saying, "I'm going to be fiscally responsible." She's been known as a fiscal conservative. And so the big stimulus budget that was considered in the Diet and some of the policies that she's pursuing, it's a bit in conflict, and it's not been a ceremonial week. It has been just nuts and bolts, and it's just been driving hard, trying to keep the coalition with Ishin in balance, even though some of the promises that were made to form this alliance have failed. And so let me see, Japan has to pursue a responsible fiscal expansion, as she has said over and over again. And so she needs to use the stimulus strategically while maintaining market confidence. We'll know a little bit more when the Bank of Japan meets later this week. But her language has become more careful and more calibrated, if you're watching it carefully, reflecting the fact that long-term bond yields are now a multi-decade high, and the yen remains under increasing pressure. Behind the scenes, this has also been a week of intense coordination with party leadership. Takaichi has held multiple consultations with LDP executives and coalition counterparts, and it has become clear that the one flagship promise to Ishin no Kai, electoral reform, was slipping out of reach before this session's end. So it doesn't look like this idea of reducing the number of seats in the Diet by 10%. That's 50. Initially, it was 50. Initially, it was just from the proportional representation list. Now it's 45, 25 from the district seats, and 20 from the proportional representation. But that's a thing of the past. I guess we have to kick that ball down the road because it's not going to work. So as the government enters its final days of this session, with one major achievement likely succeeded and secured, and one major promise unfulfilled. First, the supplemental budget. At roughly 18 trillion yen, this package is expected to pass both houses of the Diet. It passed the lower house, it's in the upper house. It will pass probably tomorrow. And thanks in part to the support from not just Ishin, but also the Democratic Party for the People, Mr. Tamaki's group. That support is crucial, particularly in the upper house, where the governing bloc remains short of a majority by about 4 or 5 votes. So LDP, Ishin, and the Democratic Party of the People coming through on that one, secure passage in the upper house. That'll probably, that will definitely be over by Wednesday. Wednesday's the last day of the Diet in any event. So how the budget passed is really important. It's probably the major achievement of the extraordinary Diet session, but it didn't hit all of the, they weren't firing on all pistons. So the prime minister and her cabinet have been unusually enthusiastic about welcoming the Democratic Party for the People's cooperation over this last week. You will remember Mr. Tamaki has been very absent, not in the newspapers, not much on people talking about him for maybe 5 or 6 weeks since Ishin and the LDP came together. But now he's come up because he's playing this role. I can get you the votes in the upper house. So now he's become a bit of a favorite. So this warmth is not accidental. It signals that the Takaichi government is already thinking in terms of a coalition redundancy, moving on into the next Diet session. In fact, I think you can say that she has been successful in managing the government better than maybe Ishiba, her predecessor. He had a different mix. She's really, I think, skillful in pulling the opposing forces together. Ishin no Kai remains a formal partner, but it also is unpredictable, especially as frustration grows over this electoral reform promise that she made to Ishin. But by cultivating the Democratic Party for the People as a responsible issue-by-issue partner, the prime minister is quietly building insurance against any future instability in the LDP-Ishin relationship. A little bit clever, isn't it? But it doesn't mean that Ishin is being sidelined. It means Ishin is being de-risked. Meanwhile, Kometo's behavior in the budget deserves a little bit of attention. You'll remember that the LDP Komeito coalition sealed the LDP majority for 26 years, basically for 26 years. There was a little bit of a break there. But now Komeito has said, I'm finished with you guys. The LDP, you're not responsible. You're just about, big business. You don't care for the small people, and you're dirty politics. So we don't want to have anything to do with you. So they've been talking with the Democratic Party for the People. They've been talking with the Constitutional Democratic Party and kind of cozying up there. But Komeito is attempting to position itself now as a responsible opposition party, one that can still deliver tangible benefits to households while preserving leverage for future electoral coordination. It wants voters to see continuity, not abandonment. There will be an election at some point in the future, and Komeito doesn't want to be voted out as a kind of minority partner. So the budget vote then becomes less about allegiance, loyalty, and more about brand management for every party that's involved. By contrast, electoral reform has gone nowhere. The LDP Ishin bill, built around a mechanism that would automatically reduce the number of lower house seats if reform talks fail, it has been effectively stalled by competing campaign finance bills and opposition control of the relevant committee. So the opposition controls the committee that is evaluating that. In the Constitutional Democratic Party is the chairman, or one of the members is the chairman of that committee, and they're just stalling the passage of that, irritating the hell out of Ishin and the LDP. And Ishin is telling the LDP, you need to put more pressure there. And the LDP is saying, look, we're trying, but we don't control that committee. That's controlled by a party that's not yours, or it's not us or you. And we're doing the best that we can, but there's only so much that we can do. So with only days left in this session, even Ishin now appears to recognize that Prime Minister Takaichi is unwilling to extend the diet or threaten dissolution of the measure that would alienate LDP backbenchers and potentially Komeito. So what this means is that Ishin could say, look, you promised this reform of the seats, reducing 10% in the lower house, and you haven't been able to perform on that. So we have two choices. We can call for a snap election, go with our opposition parties. We were kind of friends, just holding hands, but if you're not going to fulfill on your promises, we're going back to the opposition and we're going to close down the House. Or we're going to insist that you extend the diet for maybe a week or so beyond Wednesday, so that we can consider this and you can fulfill on your promise. Neither of those are going to happen. So the core tension of this last week was Ishin views the seat cuts as proof that they're self-sacrificing reform, while the LDP seems to be politically maybe costly and not really together with this coalition. They're not really in that game. And the prime minister is caught in the middle, and her reluctance to force the issue suggests that she may ultimately accept Ishin's anger rather than gamble her broader political capital. So the LDP is a big tent. It has people that inside the LDP and powerful people who dislike Ishin. They dislike this coalition. They like the fact that they've got a little bit of a majority in the lower house, but it's not the full Monty. They still need the upper house. And doing some of the things that Ishin has insisted on the LDP, it doesn't meet with everybody's vote, particularly the reduction of 10% of the seats, because the LDP will also lose maybe 10% of their members. So in order to pass that, that means that everybody in the LDP needs to vote for that measure, and everybody in Ishin needs to vote for that measure, and that doesn't look like that's going to happen. So it's not going to collapse the coalition, but looking ahead to the regular diet session, which begins in January, that's a constitutionally mandated 150-day session. It must start in January. The picture emerges that the LDP Komeito, it's not collapsing, but it's resorting itself. The LDP Ishin partnership is strained, but it's intact at this point in time. So because the LDP can't perform on its promise, and there were a couple of them made, it doesn't mean that there's a divorce, or we're just not going to hold hands anymore. they're still going to hold hands, and probably you'll see more of a aggressive move to identify Osaka as the secondary capital of Tokyo in the event of some sort of drastic change or a disaster. Komeito is, it's exploring a post-coalition identity to still keep it relevant. So it's talking with the Constitutional Democratic Party. It's kind of trying to find its seating, actually, its bearing. And even the Constitutional Democratic Party is beginning internal debates about revisiting its stance on national security. This is an acknowledgement that it cannot remain frozen in 2015 era positions if it hopes to govern again. In short, the opposition landscape is very fluid, and the prime minister is quietly benefiting from that fragmentation. So, turning to the economy, the yen closed Friday at approximately 155.75 yen to the dollar. And that's a little bit stronger than last week, but it is still deeply weak by historical standards. This volatility is not random. It reflects a convergence of forces: rising Japanese bond yields, persistent inflation expectations, and anticipation of a policy shift by the Bank of Japan, all will collide to push the yen in this position. The Bank of Japan meets this coming week on Thursday and Friday, and there is real speculation that they'll raise its policy rate again. The United States just did it this last week, and potentially the Japanese government will do it as well by about 25 basis points. Most people are expecting that to happen. Such a move would bring rates to levels not seen since the mid-1990s. That's a long time ago. The central bank appears encouraged by early signals ahead of the 2026 wage negotiations, which is called Shunto. It happens in April, and it pushes for wage adjustments with big government. With big business. But the wage negotiations are increasingly showing us that Japan may have finally been transitioning from a cost push to a demand pull inflation. So we're at a critical juncture right now, and a lot will be kind of revealed to us, not quite this week, but into the new year and the first couple of weeks of the new year. And for household, the impact of the weak yen remains uneven, even increasingly intangible. If you're living in Tokyo, you know that imported goods, energy costs, food prices, and even digital subscriptions from software licenses to app stores are more expensive, and these monthly outflows accumulate quietly but quickly. For exporters, the yen remains supportive, and even large firms are cautious, aware that the currency-driven gains can evaporate quickly if policy shifts accelerate. So the prime minister is repeating her emphasis on fiscal responsibility. That's what got her to the premiership. That is kind of the brand that she's pursuing. But it's a little bit hard to read through this lens because she's not backing away from the stimulus. But on the same time, she's keenly aware that the market confidence is now a political variable and not an abstract concern. So she really is, there's a lot of focus on her brand. Her popularity actually took a bit of a hit. She was in the 70s for 2 or 3 weeks. It went to the 60s. We reported in the mid 60s last week. It's in the high 50s right now. So there's a little bit going on there. Regionally, it's been very active and a bit uncomfortable. The Japan Ministry of Defense confirmed increasing joint activity by Chinese and Russian military aircraft, including bomber flights and fighter maneuvers around Japan's periphery. This is really shocking. These aren't symbolic flybys, they're operational demonstrations designed to normalize pressure and test response patterns. This is the Russian bombers and their fighters and Chinese flying in formation around the Japanese archipelago. They haven't invaded or breached Japanese exclusive airspace, but this is really, it's a scary show of force, wouldn't you think so? Prime Minister Koizumi addressed these developments publicly, and he held a lengthy phone call with his counterpart in the United States, underscoring the alliance coordination without escalating the rhetoric. We've done that before just recently. So Japan is increasingly bracing for a new normal in which such incidents like this flyby and these joint maneuvers are routine rather than exceptional. It looks like that is the new norm that we're heading to. At the same time, discussions are advancing within the LDP and with Ishin on relaxing arms export restrictions, a significant shift that reflects Japan's growing comfort with a more proactive security role, as insisted on by the United States, as you've been following. So these conversations are no longer theoretical, they are about the implementation. Elsewhere in the region, tensions in the Philippines and ongoing activity around the Northern Territories continue to remind Tokyo that its security environment is multi-directional. It's in the north, it's in the east, it's in the south. And add this to a series of earthquakes over the past 10 days, and the sense of constant vigilance is palatable. So everybody, people are on edge a little bit. There's a lot going on geopolitically, but there's a lot going on even, just geographically here. So the China United States issue, the United States ambassador in Tokyo has been publicly supportive of Japan, and the tone from Washington remains just a bit cooler, particularly as the U.S. explores trade stabilization with Beijing. So there's a little bit of, consternation that's going on in Tokyo about the United States and their commitment to Japan. This kind of creates the impression of mixed signals, but the logic seems to be consistent. The embassy is messaging about alliance, reassurance, and deterrence, and Washington's caution is about managing China without additional shock. So it's a very delicate game that is being played. Japan is navigating between these two layers, trying to uphold alliance credibility without becoming collateral damage in a broader US-China trade calculation. Prime Minister Takaichi's more careful phrasing of this week reflects that balancing act. She has already formally asked for a quick meeting with President Trump, which I imagine will occur probably before the year runs out. So as we close out this year, friends, expect the following: the passage of the supplemental budget guaranteed, continued frustration, but not a rupture with Ishin, intense focus on the Bank of Japan decisions later this week, and growing speculation about how the Prime Minister will frame her agenda for January's diet session. There will be 3 more briefings before the end of the year. We've got three Sundays before we end. I think the last one is on the 28th, Maya. And politics will slow briefly, but then the underlying forces shaping Japan's next phase are very much in play, and we'll be following that too. So it's not going to be a dead 3 weeks. With that, let me turn it back to you, Maya, and we'll open up things with Q&A, and I'm sure it's going to be lively today. Maya?
Yes, me too. Thank you, Timothy. And well, to everybody watching us again, thank you very much for being here on this this morning. It's very difficult to say whether it is snowing or raining here. And I hope that all of you are comfortable and dry and warm. So, and yes, Timothy, thank you for the briefing. We're moving on to the Q&A session. We've got quite a few of them at the moment. Of course, the first ones, once again, they came from Byron. But yes, but today I would like to start in the opposite order so that yes, we honor everybody who is here, and we try to be fair, even though it's really difficult to be fair all the time. So thank you very much for staying with us. And we start with a question from Manabe-san. Manabe-san, good morning. Thank you very much for posting that question. So Manabe-san says, what do you think will happen, or what is your take about religions and politics? Here will be Tenri and PM Takaichi, Unification Church, and Komeito outside of the administration. So I think that, yes, because we have had all the scandals, or not all of them, but some of them about the affiliation of political parties and also, let's say, religions and religion sects. What do you think we can expect in the future, Timothy, about this?
Well, we all know that Miss Takaichi is portrayed as a right-winger. She's really on the right-hand side of the spectrum. I acknowledge that she is, but she's not on the far right. San Seito is on the far right. And you'll notice that the LDP kind of moved a little bit more to the right to kind of capture the initiative that was established by Sanseito. And one of those initiatives was anti-foreign sentiment. So it's not about, it's not just about the Chinese. It's not about over tourism, but there is this kind of theme. It runs kind of quietly through Japanese culture, and it emerges from time to time. But when you've got somebody like the Minister for Relations with Foreigners being established, it is a new office, and comments made about, we need to watch what the foreigners are doing. We need to harden down on these business visas. That's one thing, but I think you'll also see the prime minister moving more towards the right, because it does produce benefits to the LDP. She's not bound by what Komeito was holding the LDP back earlier for 26 years. The LDP is a little bit more relaxed. So I think you might even see Ms. Takaichi visiting Yasukuni before the year is out. And that would be a huge break. I don't know when the last time a prime minister has visited Yasukuni, but even sending, offerings and congratulations, or some sort of acknowledgement of a sacred day in the Japanese calendar raises shackles all over. But what's going on between Japan and China, just because of an offhanded remark about an existential threat? I think Japan is like many of the opposition parties, like Komeito, trying to find its new footing. And so you'll see a lot of other things going on. I'm not quite sure I catch the full drift of Manabe's question about religion and politics, but I do think that you're going to see a little bit more in that direction coming from this prime minister. She said it before. She said that she would visit Yasukuni.
Right, but how about then, let's say, unification church and everything? Because we know that the scandal, she was never implicated, right? She was never related to that scandal at all, or to the unification church. But do you think that we can expect any legislation that might regulate the relations between political parties and religion sects, or yeah?
Okay, I see where you're going now. So the question here is campaign reform. And this is what got the LDP and the Abe faction into trouble in the first place, that they were holding these parties and people would pay money. I joined maybe 5 of these a week. I pay, ichimayen or nimayen for a breakfast meeting or a lunch meeting, that sort of thing. And hundreds, throughout the week, thousands of people do that. That is the LDP's main source of income. Other parties have different ways of doing it, but if you got big business that is aligned with a member of the parliament, whenever that member has a briefing or a benkyokai, of course they'll send 10 or 15 people who pay. I think they need to pay out of their own pocket. They can't be reimbursed, because that would be government being involved in politics, and that's not what that is for. But with the religious organizations, they were paying under the table and helping politicians in a substantial way, and that's what created the problem that collapsed the LDP, the LDP's majority, and the faction system. But yes, there will be legislation going on, but that was basically, sorry, I got some rain coming in. That was basically, pushed to the side. There were 2 bills that the LDP wanted to, they didn't really want to, but they were forced to consider. One was the election reform, which is reducing the lower house by 10%, and also campaign finance. And the 2 bills came in at the same time. Campaign finance was first, then reducing by 10%, and they tried to switch it. The LDP is not that concerned about the 10% reduction, but they don't want to reduce campaign. They don't want to have people looking at how they're funding their campaigns. So neither of those bills passed. But I think for campaign reform, it touches on the issue of religions being involved. But there's been so much Aum Shinrikyo. There was the Unification Church. There was Komeito. Komeito is not so much involved in this. Komeito is basically the political arm of Soka Gakkai. I think everybody knows that. But I think there's a real reluctance of these new religions, and Japan accepts new religions pretty easily, or they have in the past. I think that is I think with the government more going towards the right hand side, there'll be a security legislation. They're thinking about having a like a national security body and a form of the CIA established in Japan. That will be under discussion in the new diet. So the CIA, as you might know, is the investigation or the political arm of the United States externally. The CIA is not supposed to act within the country, within the United States. So similarly, the Japanese are considering, how do we control spies and espionage and that sort of thing going on here? Foreigners buying land next to sensitive areas, air bases, and that sort of thing. But they don't have an anti-espionage law, and they don't have an arm where they investigate or they research or they spy formally externally. So they don't have a CIA type of organization. These things are all now going to be on the working bench in the diet that starts in January. I don't think that really responds to Manabe's question, but it's difficult for me to
I'm
get to
not
it.
sure. Yes, I hope, Manabe-san, that it brings a little bit more detail to what you want to know. But also, we know that the state also funds the political parties, right, to a certain extent.
Sure.
So, yes.
Never enough.
It's never enough, indeed. So, and to this question, basically to this topic, there is a question here from Peter. No, it's from, just give me a second. Okay, from Greg. Yes, from Greg. He says, does the Benkyokai money go to the politician, or do they share some with the party? I have done some back of the envelope calculations when I attended those, and they do seem to be big earners. So,
yes. Yeah,
well,
so there are some politicians who are really good at briefing. Motegi is particularly good. He got his MBA in the United States. There are a couple of, Hayashi also got his MBA at Harvard. He is an excellent briefer. He's also both of them speak, perfect English. Their briefings are all obviously in Japanese, but they're both really good, succinct briefers. They pass out documents. They have graphs and charts and PowerPoint presentations on screens behind them. But yeah, it's valuable. It's a valuable briefing to go to. So when Mr. Motegi or Mr. Hayashi have a briefing, there are thousands. I mean, they sell out all of the ballrooms with an adjacent ballroom in the largest hotels in Tokyo. People are eager for this kind of succinct briefing. But it does generate money, and the money goes. So it's usually supported. It could be the party, the LDP, is hosting Mr. Motegi, or it could be Mr. Motegi's campaign, or his individual, or his faction group is hosting a briefing. That money comes in, and most of it goes to the party, but some of it goes to the speaker too, as a kind of a honorarium for generating that. And then one of the problems that occurred with the money and the politicians putting it in their pocket is that they weren't reporting it. And certain people were getting, even they weren't the speaker, they brought some people. They brought maybe 10% of the people, because they just encouraged them. I know you support me, but I'm supporting him. So will you please buy tickets, and join this briefing? So they might get a part of that as well. And that's what was happening. So as long as you report it, you're going to be okay. But that is the money machine of the LDP, and they don't want that to be upset, and that's why they're dragging their feet. And they didn't pass that legislation. They didn't even get it out of committee, I don't think.
Right. Yes. Okay. And then we've got Well, to the point you made about the Japanese intelligence agency, Peter Pan again says, "What about Mr. Okada? He and his family has vested interest in China. Is he a wolf warrior inside the diet?"
Oh, there are plenty of those. There are, I mean, China. It is unwise to be angry and against China. China is huge. It's in the region. It is the largest trading partner for Japan. You can't hate China. You need to have people who understand China, who receive their MBAs or their education there. I mean, there are a lot of people like that. There are China lovers. There are America lovers. In the foreign service, in the foreign Ministry of Foreign Affairs, there are different camps like there are in any ministry, and they have their battles internally about how they should respond. You know, it's been reported widely about Ms. Takaichi's comments about, if China moves aggressively on Taiwan, it's going to pose an existential threat to Japan. So Japan needs to be prepared for that sort of thing. That comment, even in the foreign ministry, there are different factions that say this is how we should respond. We should do it this way. And I think ultimately what we found was she didn't really backpedal. She just said it was an offhanded comment. Under questioning this last week, one of the opposition parties said, please share with us the preparations for the prime minister when these comments were made. And it was revealed that there was no briefing, there was no notes that were prepared for her to say it's an existential threat if China moves on Taiwan. It was, in fact, from the prime minister. It was an offhanded a comment or a natural, spontaneous comment. So this kind of backlash, how do we treat the Chinese going forward as a consequence of that? And they have really overreacted, and not only with the stopping the importation of fish stocks and fruits and vegetables and that sort of thing, and telling their population, don't go to Japan. Japan is so dangerous. More than 40% diminution in tourists over the last week of tourists coming to Japan. But not only that, but now you've got the flights of the bears and the Chinese bombers, not through exclusive territorial space, but also very scarily close and looking like, they could head to Tokyo in 30 minutes. They could be over Tokyo. This is Chinese bombers and Russian bombers flying in formation. So this is, I think it's going to continue, actually. So probably the prime minister's stance, if she's following what President Trump is advising, tap it down, keep it a little bit mild, don't aggressively go after it. But there are a lot of people, not Mr. Okada, but there are a lot of people who are saying, we need to be stronger. We need to confront China on this sort of thing, and we need to stand up for ourselves. And that's what the United States is saying. They're not the policemen anymore. You need to build up your defenses. You need to be standing on your own feet in terms of your military posture. So it's a very volatile mix.
It is indeed, and until recently we had Nikai Sensei, right, in the diet, and so he was that kind of buffer.
Yep.
He and
Yep.
his supporters, because they were the ones who were actually the bridge between Japan and China, the political bridge that supported the economic bridge as well. And now Nikai Sensei is gone, and we have talked before about this, but it's actually even more volatile nowadays, as you say, Timothy, because, the successor of Nikai Sensei has not appeared yet. A strong person like that who can be the communicator between the two countries at political level and also, let's say, economy level as well. And that's actually a dangerous situation. So let's hope that somebody like Nikai Sensei will appear soon, and will hold the two, let's say, the two sides, right, in check, because interdependence is what works for these countries here, and it has worked so far. So there is no reason for it not to work in the future as well. So, all right, let me move on then. And Hiroku-san says, earlier you said that Ishin would not have the coalition, would not leave the coalition, even if the LDP doesn't fulfill the
Yeah.
promise for the electoral reform. Why is that?
So it's kind of complicated. I think at two levels, this coalition between the LDP and Ishin. At one level, it is with the leader of the LDP and the leader of Ishin having these one-on-one meetings. It happened just this last week, where the governor of Osaka met with the prime minister. The governor of Osaka is one of the leaders of Ishin. There are two leaders. One is the governor. He's also the governor of Osaka, and the other is a lower house member that sits as a co-leader. So the prime minister is having these meetings with them. I think probably the more powerful of the two, the governor of Osaka. And at one level, she's made commitments and promises there, and he understands based on that she's trying her best. At the other level, you've got the LDP, which it's like what we were talking about with China. Some people are China hands, and some people are Taiwan hands, and some people are American hands. And so there's this battle that's going on. Similarly, in the LDP, there are some people that dislike this coalition with Ishin, and they will only bear it as far as they can take it, and not full bore. There are some people that say, we need Ishin, we need to have this coalition, we need to pass these reforms, and maybe if we do well here, we can have a formal alliance with Ishin and maybe some of the other opposition parties to strengthen and stabilize the LDP. But we're not there right now. So at that level, Ishin is really angry at the LDP backbenchers, and they're saying there are people inside the LDP, which is true, that are stymieing our commitment and your commitment to fulfill us. So I think it's just an acknowledgement, and probably it's not just the LDP dragging their feet or some people dragging their feet, but it's also the opposition party. There's a committee that is reviewing the legislation on reducing the number of seats. And the chairman of that committee is not an Ishin member. He's not an LDP member. He is actually in the opposition. So he doesn't want it to be successful so that the LDP will be punished potentially by Ishin. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. So Ishin has evaluated that the power of an alliance, even if it's on rocky ground, it's better than being in the opposition. We've kind of made our bed. We need to kind of bore through it. And at least maybe we have the commitment that Ishin, that Osaka is the secondary capital, and a promise that in the new diet session, when the diet session ends, all of the bills that are in committee or in process, if they haven't been voted on and passed or rejected, they disappear. And in a new diet session, you have to start the process all over again. So it is enormous. It's a long train ride to get the legislation up to a vote in the House or in the Senate to initiate that process to make it from a bill into a law. And you have to initiate that process all over again. So people are saying, we need to finish it. We've put so much energy into it, and we're just running out of time. Gosh, we have to start all over again. So LDP, you promised you were going to do it. You broke that promise. So as soon as the new diet starts, we're going to reinitiate it, okay? So you'll see a little bit of that going on.
Right. Okay. And moving on to Byron's questions. So he starts with a question: does the enthusiastic response by Prime Minister Takaichi and her cabinet colleagues to DPFP's support for the supplementary budget signal that they are already moving to an alliance backup situation in case Ishin decides to withdraw support at any time?
So it's like a high school dance, right? You just don't want to go to a dance and not have somebody to dance with. And Ishin is the dance partner of the LDP, at least so far. So the LDP just wants to make sure it's got its bases covered. And for the Democratic, they really want, Mr. Tamaki really wants to be back in the limelight. He wants to be, a figure of attention. He loves it. He's good at it. He's really good on camera, and it helps his party when he's speaking as a spokesman for the Democratic Party for the people. So he has votes in the upper house to pass the supplementary budget. It's passed the lower house with the 3 new members of the LDP, the rejected former Ishin members who joined the LDP 2 weeks ago. Now they have a majority there. But in the upper house, I think they're about 5 members short, even with Ishin. So with the Democratic Party for the People coming in and saying, look, we can support you in the upper house, you can pass that like that, but we have requests. Before we dance with you at the party, we would like you to do this, this, and this. So those agreements have been made, and I think, if you're Miss Takaichi, and she's already been through it with Ishin. Ishin wants this, 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 and this. Okay. Will you vote with us? Can we get this coalition going so that we can pass the legislation? Okay, so that kind of tenor, I'll take it. I'll cut off part of my nose as long as you come in, so that I have some sort of guarantee that we can pass this legislation and that my government is in a majority, even though I have to kind of carve out some of the things that I don't want to give to you to keep that together. She has achieved that. She's achieved what Mr. Ishiba hasn't achieved throughout his entire time. He was in a minority government. He couldn't pass any legislation because the LDP was weak and it didn't have 50% or 51%. And now Ms. Takaichi, she's been in office for 6 weeks. She has been able to do that to a degree, far more successfully than Mr. Ishiba. So let's wait and see. But the diet's going to end in 3 days. So just Monday and Tuesday, nothing's going to happen on Wednesday except for ceremony. So
Right.
there is going to be a great movement. They will pass the supplemental budget, but I don't expect much more. The real fireworks will start in the new diet session.
Yeah. Okay, Hiroaki-san, thank you very much for saying the Ishin party cannot leave from the coalition, so don't worry about any remarks by them. Right. Yes. Okay, moving on to the next question. Once again, Byron's. Is Komeito having second thoughts about their exit from power by voting for the supplementary budget that they had partly opposed?
Yeah. So, you know what they say, if you want a friend, get a dog. In politics, they say that one of the presidents said that about, life in Washington, D.C. Komeito, yeah, they have to live with their decision. They are a little bit chafing at it because they don't have a cabinet seat anymore. So somebody else has that very juicy ministerial position that they held for 25 years. Yeah, I think they will get a little bit of a carve out as well by coming along with the Takaichi proposal for the supplemental budget, because they get something. The downtrodden, the single mothers with children, and the main issues that are underpinning Komeito. If they don't produce something, if they don't show the people that vote for them that they are in the fight, that they are producing benefits for them, they will be irrelevant when it comes time to vote. So they're scrambling as well, and the LDP is saying, yes, we welcome that kind of collaboration. We used to be friends. Maybe we can be friends again.
Maybe. Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, that's politics, as you say. And question number 3. In the effort to build a trade deal with the PRC, is the US sending confusing signals to Japan, with the US ambassador being effusive in his support, while the enthusiasm from Washington, D.C. is distinctly tepid or lukewarm?
Precisely. Byron, you're really following the news, aren't you? Yes. So Ambassador Glass was very effusive about his support for Japan. So he gets his orders. Part of it is personality, part of it is from his own intuition. But I think he's supportive of Japan. He's living here. He is representing Donald Trump in this country, but at a more national level in the United States, coming from Washington D.C. Yes, I think that they have concluded that the bigger issue is China, United States. If we can solve that, or if we can tap that down, there might be bruises that are suffered by other countries, even our allies. But the bigger picture is we need this trade imbalance solved, and we need to tap down China joining forces with Russia, for example, or China helping with Ukraine and North Korea, and that's what we need to tap that down. So there are a lot of smart people that are working on that. The United States, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, what's it called? It's not the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's the State Department is packed with these kinds of Japan hands, China hands, that sort of thing. Japan has the same league of experts as well. And Japan is a little bit worried that they're going to be sacrificed for the bigger deal that Donald Trump is trying to arrange. And Ambassador Glass is trying to keep things on an even keel. So yes, it is a little bit curious, isn't it?
It is curious, but at the same time, I would say that the Japanese also understand why the situation is what it is. Because, yes, Japan is a partner of the United States, but at the same time, as you said, they realize that China is actually a much bigger, let's say, geopolitical player at the moment in the region.
Definitely.
Right? Yes. Okay. So, and yes.
Can you hear the rain pitter pattering on the deck, Maya?
I don't think so.
No, it's not. Okay, that's good.
It's not that strong, the sound. Okay. So, and then, yes, Rick, thank you very much for the help. Rick says, if you want a friend in Washington, get a dog. Is widely attributed to the 33rd President, Harry Truman. Thank you for that. And
thanks, Rick.
yes, Hiroaki is asking again about the US-Japan strategic relationships. Well, I personally haven't read much about this, but Timothy, yes, do you have anything to add here, or are we still looking for information about the deals?
So this is Hiroaki?
Yes.
Yeah, so you always have to be careful. He is a policy wonk of exceptional quality. So I have to be careful. He's talking about the security alliance between the United States and Japan. Is that what the question is?
Security alliance and strategic deals. Yes.
Okay. Yes. So you know now that Mr. Koizumi, formerly a candidate for prime minister, he got the defense ministry as a consolation prize. He seems to be doing really well, doesn't he? He's not as flashy and speaking off the cuff as he was in the past. He's actually very presentable. He spent 45 minutes talking with Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, I think, on Friday, and they're talking about how we deal with, the Russians and the Chinese having these flight formations, and what's going on with the Spratlys and the Coast Guard, the Chinese Coast Guard attacking the Philippine fishing vessels and, kind of flexing their arms there. The United States has agreed to cooperate with Japan and have their flights. So the United States and Japan flying in dual formations as well, as a kind of a response to what the Chinese are doing. But gosh, that's a dangerous mix. That's exactly when mistakes happen, right? So it doesn't look like this is going to be tapped down. It looks like this is going to be the new normal. And I mean, if you're reading stuff that's going on in China, if Premier Xi, if the president of China is going to move, he needs to move quickly because the economy there is a little bit teetering. I mean, it could be, propaganda that we're being fed, but status quo, it would be great if status quo just continued, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like there's a real ratcheting up. And if you're looking at the United States, there's a ratcheting it up there with Venezuela and, you know, commandeering oil tankers. There's a real aggression that's going on there. And maybe China might say, you know, if the United States does that and can get away with it, you know, what's wrong with it? And so there could be a little bit of a bleeding of what the status quo was formerly understood to be in going into a new normal. And I think that's the zone that we are entering now.
Right. And yes, Hiroaki, thank you for the hints. He says Honda investments. And yes, I have heard, I haven't done much of research yet, and I apologize for this, about Honda making investments to, well, basically into the United States production again and recalibrating its production there. But yes, please do allow us another week, and then
Okay.
probably we'll get a little bit more detail there.
On that issue, everybody knows what a K car is here in Japan, right? A vehicle
Yes.
that's under 1500 cc, and it's got the green license plate, and they're very popular in the rural areas. The little K trucks, they sell like hotcakes as used cars in the United States, and Donald Trump has just given the green light for them to bring production into the United States, selling K cars in America. So yes, there's a lot going on there. Honda is not known to be really a K car kind of manufacturer. I think it's mostly Daihatsu and Suzuki that is prominent in the K car industry. But yes, there's a lot of movement going on there.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. And going back to domestic politics again, so we've got a couple of, let's say, context enriching comments from Rick. So he
Okay.
says, I saw a local representative, Yatagawa sensei, who was pamphleting at Narita Station last week. It was during an insomnia walk at 6 a.m. And Koike sensei, a couple of days later, was there too. And also, this is Chiba 10th district. There was also a Komeito politician who was out one day just with the banner. So obviously, I guess people are preparing, Timothy,
Yes.
to, yes, trying to get more eyeballs and more visibility.
So as we've discussed here more recently, just this last week, talking about the potential for a snap election as soon as the diet opens up. We still don't know what date the diet will open. We don't know that. And when the prime minister announces the diet will open up in January on this date, that is a huge signal for us. If it opens up on this date, then it has meaning for us. It opens up on this date, it has meaning for us. Last year, the diet opened up towards the end of January, towards the last part of the month when it could open up. And this month, if it opens up at the beginning, at the very beginning, the first time you can actually physically open up the diet, that's going to be a big signal for us that potentially there is going to be a snap election. So you open the diet, you immediately call for a snap election, you prepare for that, maybe give it 4 or 5 days, and then you run the 9-day election, and then you begin the diet session with a new cabinet, with a new prime minister, probably the same prime minister, and with new members of the lower house and the lower house, and maybe even a majority secured by the LDP. So who knows? But watch very carefully. The new diet date will be announced probably next week. It could be the week after, but I expect it to be this next week. And that will tell you a lot. In any event, whether there's a snap election or not, there's probably going to be a reshuffling of the cabinet. Some of the members need to be moved around to accommodate Ishin. You know, we promised you this, we weren't able to do it. So maybe there's an accommodation here in committee seats, or probably not a ministerial position. But there is a lot that could be held in store. I suspect that it might be a snap election, actually.
Right. Okay, we'll see. time will tell. And well, with this, Timothy, we have gone through the questions that were posted this morning. And to everybody again, thank you so very much for being with us, listening, commenting, sharing your questions. Hiroaki, is Honda really going to import cars manufactured in the USA? We don't know that, but that's
Oh,
not a question without. Yes, sorry.
the reverse importation, right? The cars
Yes,
that are
yes.
produced. Yes, that is going to happen. Yeah.
All right. Yes, it definitely makes sense at the current state of tariffs, right,
Right.
between Japan and the United States. But yes, please let us do a little bit more research and come back to this topic again. And all right. So with this, to everybody, once again, if you haven't hit follow or subscribe yet, please do that and help us spread the word about these briefings by sharing them with your colleagues or friends or maybe acquaintances who might benefit from some more information about Japanese politics and the developments in the country that are affected by the political events here. Also, you remember, I believe, that there is synopsis. So the synopsis of these briefings is prepared and it is sent as a newsletter every week, a couple of days after the briefing. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. You can find Langley Esquire on Substack as well, and subscribe directly there. So with this, yes, I wish you a good, actually enjoyable Sunday and a bright new week ahead. Timothy, thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Maya. Thanks everybody for tuning in. See you next week.
See you next week.